Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Katelyn from Florals.com and welcome back for another process video. We're back with Disney again today. I am really cranking through some of these 2016 photos I still have to go through, and today's theme happens to be Haunted Mansion over at the Magic Kingdom, and I have two photos. I'm going to have one that is 4x4 and one that is a trimmed down 4x6. And what I decided to do was pull out my wonderful boutique market paper pad, which I've been neglecting lately, and pull out this paper here, which has this gold trim, and you saw me trim off at the beginning there. This piece that says "Let's Stay Home with a Sofa" doesn't really work with the vibe I'm going here, but I really liked the gold trim and how I could possibly use that to create a sort of interesting type of collage or grid pattern for this page. And as you guys know, Haunted Mansion's a spooky attraction, but I wanted to just go for the vintage vibe that Haunted Mansion gives, not necessarily a spooky vibe. So I go for this vintage style. I have a wood grain background from the same paper pad, and I'm going to start trimming down these wonderfully gold foiled pieces. And the background of these pieces are this tone-on-tone cream polka dot with a weird like watercolor distress on it, but I do like that shade a lot. And when you're working with products like these, sometimes it can be really hard, especially if they're meant for a vintage style or a farmhouse style, depending on what you're going for. It can be really hard to mix and match your stash to go with it. So I want to stick with this actual paper pad as much as possible. So what I end up doing is cutting apart the cut aparts in here. And I actually use this one in particular. It says, "Remember this." One, because it's sort of in the shape of a tombstone, which goes with the theme of Haunted Mansion, and two, because it has more gold foil and I can make it into a die cut, which makes it a more unique shape than if you just cut it out in the square normal cut apart it would have been. So I trimmed this out with my Cutter B scissors, which are my favorite scissors, and as always I have all of my staple products linked down below, so my trimmer, my scissors, all that kind of stuff is always linked in the description box in case you guys are wondering. But I do need to figure out my layout right now because I don't like the orientation of things. So what I end up doing is rotating the two layers or two grid pieces, if you will. It almost reminds me of sort of like a circuit board because the gold foil goes off both of the edges. And I really like the look of things spilling over the edge. I know that's not everyone's style, but I really liked it for this particular page. Next up, I have hit a roadblock. I need to find stuff to go with my odd theme, which is Haunted Mansion, but I'm going vintage Haunted Mansion, not spooky Haunted Mansion. So I start going through my color binders and pulling out some different pieces. I pull out a bunch that I don't use and some that I will use. And I get a lot of questions about my binders and how I do them. These are magnetic photo pages, which I know a lot of people are weary about using, which I totally get. I haven't had any problems with these ones with any of my die cuts, but again, I use a lot of die cuts all the time, and I don't neglect them for too long, so I'm not as worried as photos that sit there for years and years and then get damaged. I'm not too worried about that with my die cuts, but I'm going to pull out a bunch of die cuts that I forgot I had, which are from K&Company. I believe a Brenda Walta collection she did way back when. So I have this butterfly, some tags, and then I also pulled out a Seven Gypsies ticket and some little baby K&Company purple tags, just to bring in a few more elements, because I went for this purple theme all of a sudden, which, if you guys know, Haunted Mansion is purple, known for their purple and green color. So pulling in any of those colors would be a great choice for the theme of this page. And as I flip through my second binder, which is by collection, I didn't find much of anything in there except an acetate tag from Pink Paisley that has some roses on it, because I thought that was kind of that vintagey vibe. Next up, I pull out these K&Company Brenda Walton tags, which I believe do go with the collection for the die cuts I had pulled out. But what's funny is I don't think I end up using any of those K&Company beautiful like journaling spots, but I really like them, and I'm glad I pulled them out to remind myself that I do have them. So to build out the clusters, I start by pairing that big butterfly piece underneath that die cut I trimmed out. Then I used a bunch of the tags and plan on making a cluster in the top right with that acetate tag, the tickets from Seven Gypsy, and more of the K&Company pieces. Then I realized I wanted to pull out the typewriter style of thickers for my title, and then I had the brilliant idea of grabbing my typewriter wood veneer to go along with that, because if you're using a typewriter font, it is the perfect time to use a typewriter wood veneer. And these are more typewriter keys, not the actual font itself is typewriter, but you know, the keys of a typewriter look very similar to this particular American Craft sticker set. And then last but not least, I always have to sift through my bucket of junk and all of the leftover die cuts that have yet to be put away. So I pull out some elements here. I pull out a label to put there at the top right. I pull out an arrow and put that in the bottom left. And those sort of bring in a yellow color, like a vintagey yellow sort of, I don't know, something, you know how something yellows over time? It'd probably be that sort of shade of yellow, like a manila color. So I pull in those elements and start building out my clusters, but I have yet to glue anything down, mainly because my photos don't have their layers yet. And I usually like to do at least 1 to 2 layers under my photos. But like I mentioned earlier, these are cream-based items, so it's really hard to find some nice layers to go with that. But I end up going through several 6x6 paper pads, but somehow it did not occur to me that I should go through the 12x12 paper pad I had originally pulled out to use on these photos as well, because there's always scraps waiting. But I do end up going back to the conservatory paper pad, which is just a great paper pad in general, especially with its cream-based quality, to go with this boutique paper pad as well. So I pull out one sheet that is a cream base with the light blue scallop, which I also used recently on another layout, if you guys remember. And then I'm going back in, diving in. You'll see me flipping through there in the bottom left of the screen and deciding I didn't like anything that I had there. So we're going back to the drawing board, and I find this one, which I had originally pulled out for a kit that I didn't end up using, but it's this wonderful like tile pattern. And I like that it's a darker version, but it does match that wood grain color and that natural, but it's not too dark of a brown to really drown things out and add too much unnecessary contrast. So I'm going to use that as my second layer on this photo and as my main layer on the smaller photo. And what I end up accidentally doing on this one is I trim it one way, and then I realized it looks like it's a Polaroid frame, and I really liked how that took up a little bit more space of that rectangle up there. And so I end up leaving it like that. And it's been a while since I've done a sort of Polaroid look, but that's a really great way to give your photo either more sustenance if it is a small photo you had printed out because of quality or because of the way you cropped it or whatever it might be, or it's a great way to just add a little bit of fun, some vintage style. Much easier to layer the photo on top of extra paper than have to make a cutout within the paper to layer your photo behind, if that makes sense. But then I'm going to pull out some Scotch washi tape, which this is just an old one that I probably picked up, I believe, at Target. And it's got this like vintage gold foil to it that again works really well with the gold foil on the original papers. And I layer a slice of that underneath my photo and then a little tiny bit of my ruler washi tape, which is just the perfect vintage style for my particular liking. And I'm going to do the same with the bottom photo, 2 slices of washi tape. And then in the top left, I'd paired 2 of those 2 K & Company tags, the smaller ones, together. One's a flower and one's a bird. Green and pink, which is an interesting color scheme, but again, green is something well known for the Haunted Mansion. It's not the exact shade of green. Theirs is a much deeper green, but it's the thought that counts. Next up, I'm grabbing that butterfly and cut apart that I had used for my, which will be home for my journaling, and layering that into place. And then the adjoining other pieces will be laid down once I figure out what I want to do with the rest of my clusters. Now here I struggled to see if this tag actually had a film on it, because a lot of acetate pieces will come with a protective film. I couldn't find one. I'm hoping there's not one, but I just glue all of these into place. And I really like that they're tucked in. And the breathing room on this layout turns out really, really well. Now, I know a lot of people struggle with trapped space, and while there is a lot of trapped space on this particular page, I think it somehow works in my favor, but I'm still really happy with how it turned out nonetheless. I decided to move that label up to the top right with some additional washi tape, just so I could have 3 instances of the washi tape on this layout, and to also fill in some more of that awkward space that was left up there. And then I can move on to my title. This is not perfectly centered, nor is it perfectly straight across, but I do use my T-square to fix that. And I do add additional adhesive because these will pop right off if you do not add additional adhesive underneath them. I recommend liquid adhesive when you're working with the chipboard style thickers. But here's where I start going with my small embellishments. So I grab the typewriter. These are from Studio Calico. I don't believe they're any longer available, but I'll have all the products that are still available linked down below for you guys. A lot of this is older supplies, and I know you guys really enjoy when I do layouts that are older supplies and not necessarily the latest and greatest on the market. But hopefully you guys have some of these things or something similar in your stash. I know vintage was a huge craze back in the day, and I still own a ton of it, so I'm sure some of you guys do too. But this layout is almost complete. However, I do think it needs a finishing touch. Sometimes I do sequins, sometimes I do enamel dots. I also think it needs a bit more texture and dimension, and I just really can't figure out what it is that I'm looking for at this point. But I do reach into my embellishments and pull out the phrase stickers. Since I was looking for cream ones, I pulled out these Carpe Diem ones. They're not exactly super cream, but they're not stark white, so they fit in a little bit better than the white ones do in this particular set. So I pull out some Disney-esque ones and some ones that were like creepy. I couldn't remember what they were this time, but just some things that kind of go with the Haunted Mansion theme. And that will round out this layout. I like that it's simple, but also still has a bit going on. Sometimes it's interesting to do things that are a bit different, especially for having the photos separated. I don't normally do that type of style, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. But before I go, I'm going to add a couple more wood veneer stars, and that will be the end of this layout. Let me know what you guys think of it in the comments down below, and let me know if you enjoy the ride Haunted Mansion or not. I know I always enjoy it when I do get to visit Disney World, but I had a lot of fun with you guys here today. All of the links will be down below for you to reference, and if you guys have any questions at all, don't be afraid to leave a comment, and I'll be happy to answer. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already so you don't miss out on future videos. But thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys!